I am going to be reading The Yellow Room by Mary Roberts Rinehart. This book was written in 1945. With ever-increasing excitement, a generation of Americans has read the stories of Mary Roberts Rinehart. She has so polished and perfected her mystery novels that they hold a kind of classical position peculiar to themselves. When any of her millions of readers hear a door creak eerily, they are likely to hark back to the door in her story by that name. The dull gleam of a red lamp seen in some unfamiliar house is often, in their imaginations, the red lamp. And even railroad travel has been romantically enhanced by an almost measurable amount for the millions who, when they think of trains, think also of the man in lower 10. Numerous authors, some avowedly, several more successfully, have undertaken to imitate the combination of suspense, glamour, and creepy credibility which Mary Roberts Rinehart uses, together with her great writing skill for the purpose of spellbinding. She has been flattered by all of them, but none has equaled her. This story, her first mystery novels in 3 years, is the season's top recipe for an evening of rare adventure. Jacket designed by Saul Immerman. This is chapter 1. As she sat in the train that June morning, Carol Spencer did not look like a young woman facing anything unusual. She looked merely like an attractive and highly finished product of New York City, who was about to park her mother with her elder sister in Newport for a week or two, and who, after said parking, would then proceed to Maine, there to open a house which she had never wanted to see again. Now she was trying to relax. Mrs. Spencer in the next chair was lying back with her eyes closed, as though exhausted. As she had done nothing but get herself into a taxi and out again, Carol felt not unnaturally resentful. Her own arms were still aching from carrying the bags and her brother Greg's golf clubs, which her mother had insisted on bringing. "I wonder if I ought to take some digitalis," Mrs. Spencer said without opening her eyes. "I feel rather faint." "Not unless you have it with you," Carol said. "The other bags are piled at the end of the car, with about a ton of others." Mrs. Spencer decided that a glass of water would answer, and Carol brought a paper cup of it, trying not to spill it as the car swayed. She did not return the cup. She crumpled it up and put it on the windowsill. Her mother raised a pair of finely arched eyebrows in disapproval, and lay back again without comment. Carol eyed her. The handsome profile, the fretful mouth, the carefully tailored clothes, and the leather jewel case in her lap. Since George Spencer's death, she had become a peevish semi-invalid, and Carol at 24 her hopes killed by the war, found herself in the position of the unmarried daughter, left more or less to wither on the maternal stem. And now this idiotic idea of reopening the house at Bayside. She stirred uneasily. She did not want to go back. What she wanted was to join the Wax or the Waves, or be a nurse's aide. She was young and strong. She could be useful somewhere, but the mere mention of such activity was enough to bring on what her mother called a heart attack. So here she was, with the newspapers in her lap, filled with the invasion a week before, and Greg's golf clubs digging into her legs. She kicked them away impatiently. She had not come without protest, of course. Why Maine, she had said. Greg would much rather be in New York or with Eleanor at Newport. He'll want to be near Virginia. After all, he's engaged to her. But Mrs. Spencer had set her chin, which was a determined one. Virginia can easily come up to Maine, she said. After that jungle heat, Greg needs bracing air. I do think you should be willing to do what you can after what he's been through. Carol had agreed, although when she called Eleanor in Newport, her sister had said it was crazy. It's completely idiotic, she said. That huge place and only 3 servants? Do show some sense, Carol. You don't have to live with Mother. No, thank God, said Eleanor, and rang off after her abrupt fashion without saying goodbye. Eleanor was like that. Carol thought it over as the train rumbled on. Of course she wanted to do what she could for Greg. After all, he deserved it. At 34, he had been flying his own plane for years. He had become a captain and an ace in the South Pacific. Now he was home on a 30-day furlough and was about to be decorated by the president himself. But she was still edgy after the scene at Grand Central. The crowds of people, the masses of uniformed men, the noise and confusion, and the lack of porters. Her mind, escaping the war, ranged over what had been done and what there was to do. The 3 servants, all they had left, and all women, were finishing the Park Avenue apartment, sprinkling the carpets with moth flakes and covering the lampshades against the city soot. Carol herself had worked feverishly. With no men to be had, she had taken down the heavy hangings and done the meticulous packing away which had always preceded the summer hejira. And as if Mrs. Spencer had read her mind, she opened her eyes and spoke. "Did you ship the motor rugs?" she demanded. "Yes, they're all right." "And my furs went to storage?" "You know they did, Mother. I gave you the receipt." "What about Gregory's clothes?" "He'll be in uniform, you know. He had left some slacks and sweaters at Crestview. I saw them last year." The conversation lapsed. Mrs. Spencer dozed, her mouth slightly open, and Carol fought again the uneasiness she had felt ever since the plan had been broached. It had of course to do with Colonel Richardson. Even after more than a year, he had never accepted Dawn's death. It was not normal, of course. All last summer, he had come up the hill to see her, and to sit watching her with anxious eyes. "Dawn will have my cottage some day, Carol. You'll find it very comfortable. I've put in a new oil burner." She put the thought away and began going over what was to be done. This was Thursday, June 15th. She was to stay at Eleanor's in Newport until Sunday. Then, leaving her mother there for a few days, she would meet the three servants in Boston on Sunday and take the night train to Maine. Nothing would be ready, of course. The plan had been too sudden. She had wired Lucy Norton, the caretaker's wife, to drive over and open the house for them. But the place was large. Unless Lucy could get help, she knew that was improbable and abandoned the idea. The grounds, too, would be hopeless. Only George Smith remained of the gardeners, and as they had not meant to open the house, he would hardly have had time to cut the grass.